If you're looking to buy a block of land in Adelaide's market today, this video is for you. Today, we're joined by Andy Bui. Andy is from Century 21 Special Projects People. He's going to talk to us about first home buyers experience today, but also much more about the industry.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
So Andy Bui from Century 21 Special Projects. I started probably in real estate almost 16 years ago, Steve. 16 years ago, I walked into the Century 21 office, sat down with my principal at the moment, who is Greg Nybo, and walked into residential sales, so established homes. And then from there, sort of moved into the land sales and been in the land sales side of things, so land sales, land development, and so forth for the last probably over 10, 12 years now. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember that about 10 years ago. I reckon.
Yep.
What was it called? Powerful Gardens there?
Parafield Gardens, the Glaze, the Boulevard. One of my first projects that I did out that way. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
It's been a long time.
it has been a very long time.
Beautiful. And Robbie obviously you joined ABC about 6 years ago now.
5 years ABC, 6 years Metrocom.
Yeah, beautiful. And how did you guys get to know each other?
Well, basically, again, through yourself, Steve, being you could there at a concert, yeah. It worked out well for me because then again, where Andy's been, I've moved to Display Hunt up north, now being up in Mount Barker, and he's got the opportunity to sell the land up there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we want to talk a bit about today is really first-time buyers.
Sure.
From the land perspective. So given where we are today in today's market, tell us a bit about, if I'm a first-time buyer and I want to buy some land, what's the best way of doing that?
Okay. So look, the first thing to do, Steve, is when you're a first home buyer, you've got to understand that let's not jump into the process straight away. Okay. Speak to certain people. Now, in house and land, there's probably 4 main parts that you need to speak to, or 4 main people you need to speak to. Firstly, being the land agent themselves, the builder. They need to engage in a financier. And then after, if we get to the next step where we're signing contract, you'll be speaking to a conveyancer. They're really your 4 main people that you're going to rely on. They're the team that takes you from the very get-go to the very end. Right.
Yeah, good point there. You mentioned the 4th part, which we talked to the first 3, which is finance, land and build. But a good point that we're talking to about the conveyancers. So most first-time buyers, when you're chatting about conveyancers, they don't really know who they are, what they're doing. So, so you would be sort of telling them to at least engage a conveyancer.
We would
around what point?
Yeah, 100%. We would be looking to help them, and financiers will probably be able to help them as well. They've got conveyancers in their books that they would refer to, but overall, what we end up wanting to do is tell them to get the pieces of the pie in place, ready to move through the process from start to finish.
Beautiful. And from your experience, you're dealing directly with the first home buyers directly and with purchasers directly?
Yep. So a lot of my transactions and conversations have been around first home buyers, how they get to that point, who do they speak to, the people that they need to speak to. And then my job is to obviously find them the block of land that they're going to be suitable for them, and also guide them through the steps of being able to purchase the land, move it from contract sales into settlement of the land, and then from there it's about the build.
Okay, fantastic. And in terms of buying land, so we work obviously as builders. There's I suppose 2 types of lands that we probably be looking at. One is what we call an estate.
Yep.
The other is what we call infill. So infill is really anything that's not really in an estate.
Yep.
I would agree.
Yep.
So do you sell primarily estate land, or do you do a combination?
Yeah.
Of both?
So I probably do both. We call it brownfields, or so infields. So that's anything from 1 into 2, 1 into 3. And I also sell land estates. So some of the estates that I do sell, as Robbie touched on, was Mount Barker, Emerald Way, Mount Barker, ranging all the way through to Gawler South, Anglevale, Virginia. So it gives first home buyers a variety to choose from when they speak to someone like myself.
Fantastic. So, okay. Another question for me would be, obviously brownfields or infields, looking at estates. So as obviously as a land agent or selling land, what would be the advantages, I suppose, of an estate or buying land in a state, or disadvantages versus brownfields or infields, advantages versus disadvantages?
That's a great question. Is there a disadvantage and an advantage? Probably not so much, Steve. If they are in a position that they can buy something that is in a brownfields or infield land, yeah, go for it. And if they are in a position where they can buy something that is in an estate, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that you'd be looking to do or looking at is the variety of options when you're looking at an estate. Now, you can go for something that we call maybe a villa block, which might be 10 meters, or a super villa block might be 12.5 meters. Whereas an infield, there's not that variety. There's not much to choose from. So they got to understand that this is the block that they're buying. This is all that they're getting. Whereas in an estate, there's a variety of choice.
Yeah, I think what I found dealing with an estate versus brownfields or infields is typically in a brownfields or infields, like I said, it's a 1 into 2, 1 into 3. And so you're dealing with maybe some odd shapes, dealing with some trees or some old infrastructure to some degree. And maybe there's a crossover and invert that's a bit old and damaged. So there tends to be perhaps more costs from a builder looking at it from really of going, hey, we now need to cover these options, cover these areas, where I think with an estate, most of those things seem to be done in a way that makes it easy for us to go, okay, that's what the side of the garage needs to go on. It's pretty standard blocks, so we can fit most things.
Correct. And look, you're absolutely right. That's what the infield or the brownfield stuff sort of restricts you from, is because there's certain things that you can't be aware of or you're not aware of. And a lot of developments that do happen in that way, where mum and dad developers are developing 1 into 3, is that they don't have those that sort of information that they can provide to first-time buyers. Whereas in an estate, your crossovers can be done already for you. Look, a lot of people don't even know what a crossover is. What's a council verge? So damages to inverts and driveway inverts. What happens there? Who's responsible? So there's those sort of advantages in regards to buying something that is infield versus buying something in an estate.
Exactly. If you like a particular estate, for example, if you like Rostrevor, there's no estates, so you sort of have to look at what's available on the market at that point.
100%. With regards to estates, there's a heap of them out there at the moment, but they're not in specific areas where a lot of people are looking. East and west are particularly very low in regards to land estates. You're starting to look out towards the northern suburbs, the southern suburbs. A lot of the market at the moment is probably looking out towards the northern suburbs. That's where they're trending. So we're seeing a lot more.
What do you think the trend is to that? Is it an affordability trend? Is it just because everyone just loves the north? What's the trend?
I think the trend is to get into the market. I think a lot of our Australian dream right now is to try and get into the market. We're finding out that the market itself is probably a little bit exhausted with land. The demand is still there, but land is a little bit soft on right now. So people are just wanting to get into the market before it gets unaffordable, if that's another word.
So there's suburbs that tend to become more popular now purely based on affordability and
100%.
Lack of, land you're probably going to get in your brownfields or infields. There's a little bit more in the northern sort of baby belt, really. That's the growth belt.
So exactly that, Steve, is the northern corridor is what we call it. A lot of people are trying to find their way into that market at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic.
I guess another thing, Andy, you sell residential as well in town to establish, so you got the option if a first-time buyer wants to be sort of closer in the suburbs, you can then sell them down to park.
100%.
Buy and establish, or, affordability, you've got to go out to the north or up in the hills.
Yeah.
Correct.
So in terms of popularity for you, Andy, so what's popular at the moment in terms of, because you do a bit of Mount Barker, you do a bit of North, you find they're both popular or?
Oh, great question. Look, I think there is a popularity behind Mount Barker, absolutely. I think up there at the moment we've got about anywhere between 12 to 14 estates, if not more. Anglevale has been an absolute blast at the moment with the amount of people wanting to get into that area. That's been an area where over the last couple of years has boomed. Anglevale, the surrounding areas are now starting to lift as well. Andrews Farm, Manapara West, Manapara Downs. then you move over to sort of Virginia, Two Wells, Riverlea. They're all starting to come up as well now.
Yeah, fantastic. So, what would you think would the benefits be as you see it for a first home buyer, maybe going down the land path and then building versus maybe buying established, as from an agent's perspective?
Look, there's a lot of incentives with regards to land or house and land packages at the moment. First home buyers grant, builders grant, no stamp duty, all of that is applicable at the moment with regards to first home buyers.
Yeah.
When you're buying an established home, they don't get that sort of incentive in sense because it's not brand new. So if they're buying established, they might lose out on some of the incentives that are there provided by the government.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, building and buying land and going through that process can be a little bit more time consuming.
Yep.
So sometimes building's not for everyone. So established sort of does provide an option where you can sort of see it and buy it now. I suppose this is maybe sort of seeing a piece of land and going, what am I putting on here? So sometimes that ability for time is very
it does, and it comes down to, Steve, whether it's time that they're looking at or whether it's a future project for them. Okay, first home buyers love to be able to design something for themselves, something that they can move into, be proud of.
There's something nice about you, isn't it?
100%, absolutely.
Love showing you things, Robbie.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
And what we're noticing now, obviously, when we're doing a lot of house and land, what we are noticing, especially as the market has changed, become a lot more competitive in that space, we are seeing, I suppose, the way that first-time buyers are able to secure land. What have you noticed the difference, I suppose, over the last maybe 5 to 10 years in terms of maybe how you're selling land 5 to 10 years ago versus today?
Yeah.
Are there some major changes and differences?
Yes, there is major changes. Previously, when first home buyers were buying, you could buy under what we normally would call it as a house and land package deal. House and land package deals allow you to take a land contract, which is what I do, and a build contract, Robbie, what you do, and we provide it to the financier all as one and provide them as one borrowing. Yeah. These days it's changed a little bit. The way that developers want their land contract is a little bit different as well. Yeah. So it does, there are some changes over the time. We do see that purchasers are adapting, first home buyers are adapting as well. And I think that's the thing with first home buyers, that we need to educate them in regards to being adaptable to the conditions of our market at the moment.
Absolutely. Certainly it's a seller's market. So obviously it's all in the seller's favour. So they're obviously holding all the cards to a degree versus maybe 5 to 10 years ago, it was more of a buyer's market. So there's certainly some shifts more to what the seller wants in terms of conditions.
Yeah. So there was an oversupply at that point in stage where supply was at plenty. You could negotiate on pricing. You could go out and choose 3 or 4 different blocks that's going to be suitable for you. You can take those blocks and then walk into someone like Rob and go, hey, Rob, can you design me a home on these blocks and let me think about it?
You had more time as well.
I had more time.
100%. You choose 3 and sitting up for 1, 2, 3 weeks before they make a decision. Whereas now first-time buyers, it's like you're lucky if you get 1 block and you've got to make a decision really quickly on what you want to do.
That's exactly right.
So it does, I think, for when you're doing it for the first time, it can be quite stressful. It can be a lot of anxiety, a lot of things that you don't understand, and to be able to say, hey, you've got to make a decision now, otherwise you miss out. That could be even more stressful to some degree.
That's a great question. In your opinion, the next 12, 24 months, what do you see Adelaide's market in terms of building a new home, but also established look like?
Crystal ball, Andy.
Crystal ball. If only we had a crystal ball, we'd all be quite wealthy.
Exactly.
Look, Robbie, good question. It's always hard to determine what the next 12 months is going to be. Everyone's got an opinion in regards to where we're going to be. Look, the market in South Australia doesn't shift so much as what we do in the Eastern Seaboard, okay? When we're making comparisons to the Eastern Seaboard, we can't. We're a different market down here. What I see with our established market versus our land market is our established markets continue. There's going to be a continued growth. It's going to be a steady growth. With what the government's doing at the moment, we've just had an interest rate rise over the last couple of days. Once that introduction comes in, It puts a bit of fear into purchasers and the established market. But those that are there that are ready and have always been ready, they're not going to phase too much in regards to the interest rate rises. In my opinion, I think the market will continue steady in the established side. The only part with the land side of things is whether we've still got the stock to be able to service the demand. Now, with what we're seeing right now, we're probably at a point where our supply is a little bit lower than what our demand is. And we do anticipate that supply is going to increase as well. So once supply increases, it will then trend back to the demand being able to, supply supporting the demand. So to answer that question, look, I think the market will still be steady and there'll be some sort of an incline towards the end of the year. The only time we'll see a shift in the market downwards would be what they call a burst in the bubble. Whether that will happen or not, whoever knows.
It's hard to know, isn't it?
It is.
I think you raised a good point about opinions. Everyone's got an opinion on the market or what's going to happen. And sometimes we can get too caught up in opinions and what people are saying. I think really for me, it's just about bringing everything back to basics. So, we're living at home with mum and dad and we want to get our first home. Don't worry too much about what the market's doing. Just sort of go back to basics. So, how much can we borrow? How much deposits do we need? Where are we at? What can we afford? What are we comfortable with? And then sort of go into the market and look at what you can buy for your money
100%.
versus trying to get too caught up in when's a good time to buy and is my property going to go up? Is it going to go down? I think sometimes those things can stop people actually just making the first step, which is really important.
Oh, 100%, Steve. And to touch on that, you're absolutely right. And this is where I bring back to the point where you need to start engaging as a first home buyer, engage in speaking to your financier, speak to your builder, speak to your land agent, make sure you've got your ducks in line. That will allow you to put your best foot forward when there is more supply of land. And if you're doing that right now, later on, 3 months, 6 months time, you'll be ready. You'll be at the top of the tree. You'll be ready to go. And yes, there are variables within everyone's needs and wants and what they want to do. There are going to be opinions about whether we can do it. But one of the main things I always say to my clients is, look, Mr. and Mrs. Purchaser, is this going to be your forever home, or are you just buying it and then flipping it in a year or two? If it is, what's a small amount of money here, or what's it to build here, or what's your selections like here going to affect your overall experience?
It's a good point. It's good to understand what am I buying and why.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be here for 10 years, adding a few extra things now, that the things that you want over a 10-year period is negligible versus going, hey, I'm not really emotionally attached to this purchase. I just want to get in and get out.
Correct.
It's a very different buying decision.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So in terms of for you, Andy, if obviously you did a lot with people wanting to buy land that you have for sale, what, I suppose when you're trying to make a decision on, obviously getting multiple offers, what if I was a first time buyer, what's things should I be considering to maybe put myself in the best position to be considered if there's 10 people in line?
Look, great question. Every organization and every agent does it a little bit different as well. Yeah. For us at Century 21, what we do is we have a hold process rather than going out there and just picking and choosing. And that's something that we've brought on over the years that we've been dealing with our developers. What we do is still maintain to put your best foot forward. But what we do on a hold process is that we've got a hold system which allows you to put the block on hold. If you are the primary holder, we give you a few days to have that discussion with your financier, with your broker, with your builder, to make sure that everything is in place, to make sure that your due diligence are done properly. And then before you go to contract, these are the things that you can do.
Yeah. Okay. They can make a much better process for the person.
It just makes it easier and it's smoother, and they're not uptight about things and they're not nervous about it. They understand the process. They know what they're getting themselves into as well.
They repeat it back to mum and dad when they come in.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. And you know what? The other thing with first home buyers is they get caught up in certain areas where they don't know.
Right.
For example, unconditional and conditional contracts.
Yeah.
A lot of developers at the moment don't want a bar of a conditional contract. Now, what I mean by a conditional contract, subject to finance. A lot of them don't take subject to finance deals, but you need it. You need that sort of blanket. You need that security blanket. And without it, they're walking into it blindly, or they're walking into it understanding that, hey, the land's not going to be developed for another 12 months. So they're holding on to this contract for 12 months without knowing what the next 12 months is going to provide. And touch wood, if you lose your job, what happens then?
Yeah.
You lose your deposit. And these are the things that your first home buyers don't get told. And it's something that I think an education, when they're speaking to their land agent or they're speaking to their financier, they should be told that.
And I think you raised a good point earlier, Andy. It's about having those 4 key things spoken about. If you're speaking to your broker or your financier, if you've got a conveyancer that you've already engaged, if you've already spoken to your builder to some degree, and you sort of know what areas you're sort of going to,
Correct.
sort of that pre-homework, you know that once you're sort of entering in to something, you sort of got a bit of an idea of what are some of the things you need to look for before you get into it.
Correct.
Versus, I think we sometimes see people that have come to us and say, I got this great block of land. I said, right, you've already purchased it. And then you sort of go, well, did you realize it's got 3 meters of slope on it? And they've gone, well, no, it looked pretty flat to me. And then they don't realize the actual impact that 3 meters of slope, what it can actually have in terms of cost of build.
Correct.
And I think sometimes just having the homework done before engaging the right one, where you can avoid some of those pitfalls.
Absolutely. And you're totally right, Steve, in that manner. Purely in the fact that they're not going to know everything, and we don't expect them to know everything, and that's why we're here to help.
Yeah.
We're geared up to be able to help them on some sections. And as a land agent, I'm not going to know anything to do with the build or the conveyancing side. And that's why we engage this team, and they engage this team to be able to help them and work for them. But you're absolutely right. That's the other part of it as well, is because they fall in love with a block of land, not knowing that there's the land might be flat. But when you talk about flat can mean flat. Flat can mean anything. So grading, exactly. So when we talk about flat, I talk about grading, all right, or contours, and then it sort of blows their mind that, hey, what does that mean? So I've got to go back to the builder. You know, these things here, if you engage in those 4 parties to work with you, it makes life easy for them. It makes the decision easy.
Working with you, Andy, I think that's the difference too, because you specialize in land, you have a bit more of an understanding of maybe we're just selling that land, what it sort of means to the first time buyer or the purchaser. And I think what's great about working with you is that you do maybe ask them some questions or get them thinking about, hey, you know, what are you looking to build on here? Have you spoken to your builders? Have you made sure that you can, you know, get what you want on that block of land? Not a lot of agents will do that. They'll just sell the land and say, you know, best. So I think,
but we've all been there as first home buyers. We've all been there. We've all had our battle scars in regards to buying our first block, to buying our first home, to building our first home. So taking all that experience and passing it on to those first home buyers, that's what I'm proud to do.
Yeah. What some questions would you get commonly for home buyers when they're looking to buy a block of land?
With regards to questions, generally how much, and are you negotiable? Are you negotiable? What's the deposit? Is a very big one. And that's my question to them, is how much deposit. So I do a bit of pre-qualifying before we get into that, because you don't want to get them on this exciting roller coaster. They get into the heights of this ride, and then all of a sudden, bang, they fall, and they don't want to do it anymore. You throw the excitement out there. If you build your questions, you build your pre-qualifications of these clients at the very start, they shouldn't have too many questions except for, is the price negotiable? Can we go look at it? When's it going to be done? So when you're talking about land, when can I start building is a very common one. It's not about when you get your block of land, it's when can I start building? And that's the relationship and the joint venture that we get on as an agent and builders is I can go back to Rob and go, Rob, hey, from the time that we settle on this block of land, when can you and your builders start? So you know, that sort of relationship and that sort of open communication helps first home buyers with their questions as well.
Yeah, and about negotiation, I think that's a really good thing as well. Sometimes when we're buying in brownfields or infields,
Yep.
sometimes there might be 3, 4, 5, 6 people vying for one
Correct.
block, and that can drive the price up. And
Yep.
these conditions can change quite a bit. Typically, an estate will have it's a set price. Typically, these are set, terms and conditions that we
Yep.
want. So you can get a hold, you can do your due diligence, and you're not having to then go into a negotiation of different sorts of
Correct.
things and worry that
Yep.
someone's going to come in at the top and
Yeah.
overbid you as well.
And that's and
Give you a bit of peace of mind, I think.
absolutely, Steve. And that's exactly it with estates, is that prices are generally set already for you. Infield stuff is very negotiable. They put a range out there and you sort of negotiate. But yeah, in an estate, these are the prices. This is what you're going to get with it. These are all the documentations that you're going to get with it. And then we pass it to the builder, and the builder goes, okay, well, this is the home that I can site on this block for you. Fantastic, it all fits. Let's go see if the broker can help us out here. Done. And away we go.
That's the key part as well. You talk about obviously the conditions in your contract. Sometimes a buyer will be using a grant that needs house and land to settle simultaneously. That might not be the right block for them as well.
Correct. Yeah, exactly right.
So negotiations, funny, I was looking at negotiation, and I think everything's always a negotiation, just with everything we do on a daily basis. But if someone was, obviously you work for your seller,
Yep.
You obviously got someone that wants to sort of buy what you're selling to a degree. And this might be the reverse question for you, but what are some good negotiating tips for I suppose the buyer trying to negotiate with you that they can use? And that might be counterproductive. You probably don't want them to know these things, Andy, but
No, look,
some good things,
absolutely, Steve. One of the main things with negotiation is know your limit. Okay, know your limit, but also speak to your agent about the limit as well, because you don't want to go in there and lowball the developers or lowball your vendors, because at the end of the day, they're not going to review you or view you as a serious buyer, right? So what you do is speak to your agent. If there's an opportunity for you to negotiate on a price, yeah, well, let's talk about it. Let's discuss what that pricing might be. If you're $100,000 off of what the price is, fair chance they're not going to take and knock it back.
And going back to previous, I've said 10 years ago, you might be cheeky enough to do that 10
Correct.
years ago, but
Correct.
in this current market, any form of negotiation is normally an upward negotiation. Downward.
Pretty much.
So typically, when you try to use some tactics of negotiation that you did maybe 5 or 10 years ago, they probably don't work quite the same in this.
No, absolutely. The market's shifted a lot with regards to negotiations, especially with in an estate or land.
Yeah.
Look, established market where the home's already built, the established side of things, you can probably negotiate a little bit harder. Whereas when you're in a brand new estate, in a land estate, it is going to be a lot harder. Yeah.
So what negotiating tips is? You've bought a couple of properties now, so
The best thing to me is, even if someone's coming to me, are you pre-approved? Because again, if you don't know how much you borrow, well, you've got to start at that point. Otherwise, you're not going to go far. The second thing is also probably finding out, again, if they're going for grants, if they need house and land to sell simultaneously. Then again, what timeframes is it from paying a deposit to getting you to site is involved? Because again, if you need house and land to sell simultaneously, you got to have the right builder to get that organized as well.
Yeah. So my typical analogy that I use as a negotiating model is, cash unconditional from when I'm buying something, I can offer cash unconditional, puts me higher up tree
100%.
versus to, a whole bunch of terms and conditions, house and land only, subject to soil report, subject to. So sort of I use that sort of gradient. So the more terms and conditions I've got here, typically the more I'm going to be paying. Versus if I've got a cash unconditional contract, typically I'm looking to maybe get a bargain on sort of the price to some degree. So I sort of use that sort of model a bit to go, hey, if I'm coming in with no terms and conditions and a sure deal, then my purchasing or buying power is probably better than if I've got terms and conditions.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the sort of model that I use. Then it's just trying to find that common ground where the cash unconditional and terms and conditions and price sort of align somewhere in the middle. And again, with an estate, to some degree, that doesn't really play out.
No.
Because it doesn't matter how good you are over here, they're going to say that's the price, right? And then it's exactly right. So I think that's a scale that I typically use as a bit of a model. And then you sort of got to, I think, do your homework, like you said before. Do your homework. How much can you borrow? What is your actual limit? Can you do cash unconditional? Do you need land only? And once you sort of know what those things are, then you sort of just sort of feel out the agent or the buyer, the seller to a degree to work out, really where are we at in this scale of.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. No, you nailed it on the head with regards to that. Certain buying powers allows you to jump the queue a bit. With regards to cash unconditional versus maybe a subject to finance deal or a subject to house and land deal. Yeah. So each of those have levels of, levels of where people or developers will sort of almost grade you.
Yeah.
But unconditional contracts will be far ahead of anything else.
In this market. How about you, Rob? How about you?
Well, I mean,
How do you do that?
how do I negotiate? Well, like I said, a key thing, deposit, right? Does your buyer have the right deposit? Because again, as an agent, you've got to make sure you get the right deposit amount as well.
Yeah.
So make sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you're coming to walk into buying something and you only have $5,000 deposit, it's not going to help. It's not going to go a long way for you. Okay. Hence, that's why my advice to all first home buyers, go see your financier, speak to them about what your position is, get yourself set up. It's just the way they need to do things.
Deposit too, and I think what you're sort of referring to there, Rob, to some degree is sometimes you might use a mainstream lender and your deposit might be $100,000 that you need to transact on the deal, but you might only need a 10% deposit for the land. Let's say the land's $300,000, it's $30,000 deposit. Sometimes we're doing low deposit products where they might only need $10,000 deposit, but they're buying land for $300,000. They need $30,000 just to secure the land. So in that scenario there, the client may only need actually 10 to 15 grand to do the whole rest of the land package. But if they buy the land as a 10% deposit, they need $30,000. So all of a sudden I actually can't buy that land because I don't have actually enough deposit to actually buy that land. So sometimes we need to pivot and go, well, this particular developer over here is probably giving us a $10,000 fixed land deposit, which runs in line with your deposit that you acquire for house and land. So
absolutely,
maybe they're two estates, but this one here's got slightly better terms and conditions that allow us to buy, whereas this one unfortunately doesn't. So I think that would be a big thing that people don't actually consider when they're actually trying to buy. Some land. Yeah.
Would you have any other tips for a first home buyer? You touched on obviously speaking to a broker. Would it be anything else? Buyers coming in, walking in the office, want to buy a block of land today. Yeah. What advice would you give me?
Like I've said from the start, is be prepared. Okay, preparation. It's all about preparation. My tip to first home buyers is understand the process, be prepared, but be flexible with the process as well. Look, I understand that they want that block or they want that house and land package, and they're not willing to sort of navigate around that or speak to the people that they need to speak to. Look, sometimes they might have a friend or family that are in the industry, or as a financier, we're just going to go with them. We're always going to pick them as our broker. Sometimes they might not have the avenue to be able to do the things that they need to do. So be flexible, be a sponge, and understand the process, but also be prepared. Okay. Be prepared by, again, speaking to your financier, speaking to your builder, speaking to your agent. Understand what your budget is the main thing as well. It's a good part of it, because every block of land is going to be a bit different. Every development is going to be priced differently as well. So you can't walk into, for example, Mount Barker and go to one development and expect that that's going to be the same price as another development. Understand that you may need to shop around a little bit. So
that's a good point. And I think when you're talking that, you may be talking maybe site costs, but another one that people don't know too much about when you go from estate to estate is a thing called encumbrances.
Correct.
And that can be very different from estate to estate. So for people that know what an encumbrance is in relation to the land, what is an encumbrance?
Okay. The easiest way that I can explain an encumbrance is the do's and don'ts of that land estate. Okay. What can you do? What can't you do? Okay, there's certain restrictions. A couple of things that first home buyers don't know or don't understand as they're first coming in is you watch out for encumbrances, watch out for easements. Okay, so we haven't touched on easement. Easements might be, you know, there might be a green transformer box on their block of land.
Exactly.
You don't want a green transformer box.
They realise it's actually got a
Exactly.
green box in front
You
of
know, there might be drainages that sit at the back of the land that you can't actually put anything structural on top of it. So there's certain easements there as well. But back to an encumbrance are for me to explain, it's do's and don'ts. Design guidelines is something that builders will help them, but they need to understand it as well. Right? And the easiest way for me to explain to clients is design guidelines are just that it shows you what you can and can't build. You don't want your neighbor to be, you know, building this beautiful home next to you. You've got a beautiful home, neutral colors, great facade. Then your neighbor brings in a pink door, purple roof.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Nothing wrong with pink doors.
Nothing wrong with purple roofs too, but hey, the design guideline doesn't allow it.
No, that's exactly right.
But yeah, so these are the things that they need to just also understand as well. And encumbrances can whack a cost on top of it before you even sign anything. There's certain areas, certain developments that have encumbrances that you must need to do. Okay, just an example might be building a home that needs to have a veranda at the front, a portico at the front. Not every estate's got one, but if you need to have it, there's already however much money.
That's where it gets a bit tricky too, to try and understand across block of land what it's going to cost me to build on it. But then there might be some other considerations around what I need to do in my home.
Correct.
And so for some people, if they don't, for example, want to do particular things to their home, then that estate may not actually be for them.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So there's certain things that you need to also look at within the estate as well that might not be suitable for their needs.
How I described encumbrance or design dialogue people as well protects the integrity of the estate.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, you don't want your neighbor to just have a purple door, pink door, but also protects the value of your home as well.
100%.
So it's something that's changing your life. You need to sell, you need to change and pivot again. Yeah. Your value is still kept the same as what is it on the street.
Absolutely.
So I think the key is whenever you're buying that estate is maybe to ask for the design guidelines and also maybe a copy of the encumbrances for that particular estate and sort of go through it. The main one I normally see in the encumbrance is the colour of a fence.
Yeah.
As Ben said, you get to site, you start building and go, what do you mean that's the colour of my fence? So did you read the encumbrance? And I know I get it. So there's some funny colours when it comes to fence.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen in an estate, Steve, where they've gone from smooth cream to woodland grey to what is it, the river gum green colour. So you've got 3 different colours on every shade. Yeah.
So you got to be aware of those.
You do.
Beautiful. For you, all good?
I'm good. Having your questions?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you for your time.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.